Hi, welcome back. Brendan here. In this video, I'm going to be taking a look at Webstudio and specifically the CMS functionality to build use WordPress as a headless CMS. And we're going to render that data in Webstudio. You can see here I've got some posts rendered. These are all from the REST API. And on the front end, I can click to view any of these, and it takes me to that specific post, right? So for this tutorial, we're going to be looking at the REST API, headless WordPress, and we're going to be bringing the posts in from the WP Minute. I'm not affiliated with them or anything, although I was on the podcast a few months back. But just shout out to them. They do some great stuff for WordPress news and just general WordPress tutorials and things like that. So definitely check them out. So what we're going to be doing is pulling that data in with the REST API and rendering it in a collection in Webstudio. So first of all, what is Webstudio? Webstudio is a advanced open source website builder. You can self-host this. You can export it as HTML, CSS, and JavaScript and host that wherever you'd like. For this tutorial, I believe we're going to be needing the Pro version because the Pro version has CMS. And that lets you use any headless CMS. So if you're more familiar with WordPress builders, importantly, Webstudio does not have a CMS built in. You can't create blog posts and create categories and link everything together, but instead you use an external CMS like WordPress, or you could use any of the other tools supported. I've set it up with Airtable. I've set it up with Notion. I think I did use HighGraph once too. And then you can use other ones that are not on this list. Basically, anything that supports an API will allow you to connect into Webstudio and render your stuff on the front end. So it's the idea of headless CMS, where you have a content layer where your content is managed and new content is created, and then a presentation layer that you take that data and render it on your front end of choice. So again, in this one, we're going to be checking out Webstudio, but the same concepts that apply to rendering, React apps and Svelte and Vue apps and things like that. So that is what you need. The pricing then is $20 a month. And I think they're running a special right now that's $10 a month. So you can try that out. Again, you need that to connect to the CMS version. You can try out just the builder for free, and you can host a domain there, and it's pretty generous, but you can't do these more advanced functionalities. And so let's just jump into it, shall we? I'm gonna hit the dashboard, and I've got a bunch of projects here. I'm just gonna make a new project. We'll call this WordPress Demo. And I like to start with my dynamic data first before I really do anything on the canvas. So we could do that. So on the body level here, I'm going to go to settings, and then I have data variables, and you can see I have various system settings, but I'm going to create a new data variable. We'll call this WP Minute Posts. And for the type, we're going to choose a resource, and that allows us to put in a REST API or a GraphQL URL endpoint, and then we can choose the method to what we want to do to get posts or post things or whatever. So what we're going to do is come back to the WP Minute. I'll copy that URL. And after that, we'll just connect to the normal REST API. So WP-JSON, if I can spell, /WP/v2/posts. And that'll hit the posts endpoint to see all our data. So once that's done, I can, and it says JSON now because it's returned a value, so I can inspect that. And just like that, we have our data. We can see the post ID. We can see the modified dates. We get all those endpoint pieces from the REST API, right? So we can see the status, and there's our rendered title, right? There's our rendered content. And if I scroll down, you can see there's a big long list because it's got all the different posts. So here's another post right here, from freelancing to product success, right? Scroll down more. And you can see it's getting all that wonderful data from WordPress. So here's the next post, right? So it's getting probably the first 10 posts. We could append this to get more than that. So we could do I don't even remember what the endpoint is. Let me just check my thing here. So it's per page, and I was just testing it here in Postman, and so we can append that there, and that'll get the next 30 pages, right? So it's going to be a longer list even. And so now we have our data connected here. Let's try and render that on the front end. So what we can do, there's one thing to keep in mind. It took me a while to find this, but if you go to Marketplace and then CIQ libraries -sections, that will give you some wireframes. We're just going to use these to speed this up. So I'm just going to pick like this one. All right. And we'll do just very little styling. I'm not going to spend time doing styling in this tutorial really. I'm going to, I guess, put like a class on here. I spelled container wrong. Awesome. Let's delete that. Container, and we'll turn this into I don't know, like 1200 width. And the other thing we can do is we can do grid. I guess they don't have grid built in yet, so you have to type it in, display grid, and then grid template columns. We could do repeat 1FR, comma 3. I got the wrong one. 3, 1 FR. All right. Repeat 3, 1 FR. Okay. Well, I don't know if that's working. It is. Okay. So that's working. Now what we need to do is actually delete this data. So if you're familiar with Bricks, you know that there's the query loop, right? And so there's other builders, obviously, that have that. It's the same concept where we're going to iterate over a collection of data, right? So I can just add this in there. And within our collection, I can just delete the placeholder text in there. And I should be able to just drag my column into it. Okay, so that's perfect. Now it's iterating over the 3 things in there, right? I can delete that. Oops, let's not delete that. We can delete this box in between. And so there we have our collection. And now we just need to basically take from our body level where we have the data variables here, right? We can see this data is coming in. Now we just need to connect that to the collection here. And so on my data for the collection, I can delete all this. And I can say I want my posts. And then we use JavaScript notation to just do dot. And then we select the data. And if I hit dot again, you can see there's all my posts. There's my 30 posts, right? It starts at 0, goes to 29. And we actually don't want to go to the individual ones. We want to just stay on the data level. And so I can just select that. I can click here or wherever to just confirm that. And then it's going to pull in all that data. It's looking a little weird for now, but we'll fix that. But we can go in here and, right, we see our data. In fact, if I open the expression editor, we'll see all that data come in, right? So now we can bind it to our collection, all right? And so let's see, our grid is not working properly here. So it looks like it's still flexing. So let me just go to the wrapper container here, and I can switch to the local styles. You can see that red, and I'm just going to reset this value. Yeah, perfect. So then we just have our grid. Okay. And so wonderful. So that's what we need. We are iterating over the data. Now we just need to bind our data from this collection and bind it to the individual items. So just like in Bricks, you would select like the heading, and you would go into your content, and instead of using a static value, right, we would select our dynamic data, and I can delete what's in here. And there we can see that we have a new JSON object here where we can select that. And then I'll use the dot to select the data that I want within it, right? So I can select dot, And there's all the individual items on that post, right? And so if you know what you're looking for, you can start typing, right? But you can also just keep scrolling down to get the thing you want, right? It's in alphabetical order, which is nice. And there's title. And you can see it doesn't have a value like type equal post. It has a JSON value attached to it. So that means there's child data below that. So we can select that. And we don't see anything yet, right? So we can hit the period. And there's our rendered title. So I can select that. And that should be all we need. If you hit the period, nothing else comes up after that. That's the last item in that JSON object. So just like that, I can then click off. And there we go. I have my title, right? So let's do the same thing with the other data. So I can go to my image and I can go to my source. So instead of the placeholder, we'll select a dynamic value, right? So I can select the collection item and we can scroll down to see kind of what we have in here. Images, and actually really any WordPress site can have their data structured slightly differently. So you just want to make sure that you're picking the right thing. Sometimes it's called featured media, but that just returns an ID string. But the WP minute was nice enough to put stuff into a JSON object here for my featured image. So I can see SRC for source. So I'll select that. And then again, we're going to press the dot notation to find the object that we want within that, right? So dot, and then I can see some values here. Those are probably like height and width, but we want the URL, right? So I can select that. Cool. And just like that, we have the particular post matched with our title, the image matched with our title. So we could put a little bit of styling. So I'll just throw a div in here. Again, this is not a style tutorial, so I'm just going to do this real quick, and it's not the best way to do it, but I don't know. We could do like 250 pixels max, and then overflow hidden. All right. So now they're all at least the same size. All right. So we're looking good. We have a grid of 30 posts, right? We have all the different, oh, there's me. We could now put in like the excerpt, right? I'm just going to save you the time. So if you try to do it on this regular text element, it might bring in some of the HTML formatting, and you don't really want that. So we're going to pick a different item. We're going to pick a content embed. And I'll delete this regular text one here. And then within this, again, I can go to my settings and I can say, let's pull in the data that we want, right? So I can pull in my collection data. I can pull in excerpt. And that will pull in my excerpt. And you can see it's got some errors. You can see some broken code there. That means I didn't select all the content I wanted. I want the rendered content. So let's select that. And like that seems to be working. So we have now we have our dynamic image, dynamic title, and dynamic excerpt, right? So we're looking good. Let's talk about what we're going to do to make this even more dynamic. Now, what if I want to click on this and read the whole article? Okay, so you can do that very easily in Webstudio. You just come up to your pages, and we're going to make a new page here. And we're not going to make a whole page for each blog post, right? We're going to do this dynamically. So I'll call this posts, I guess. And for our dynamic path, we're going to create a dynamic value here and do slash and then colon and type in something like slug. And that will create a system variable that we can use to pass in stuff. So let's create that page, and it's a blank page. So let's just go quickly add a wireframe. And let's see what they got. Something with blog, maybe. Blog. Here's some blog posts. Let's select this one. All right, so let's also put below this another box, and let's put a box within that. We'll put container. Oops. We want a class called container, right? Although that has my grid on it. Let's just make, let's just do it at the ID level. It's fine. something like 800 pixels wide, and we'll do auto margins to center it. All right, so this is where we're going to render our content. And so I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I put a content embed. Let's drag that in there. And we can delete that text. And so now what we need to do is basically pass this data from the slug value into this, right? Okay, so let's see what we need to do is I'm going to go back to our post here, our homepage, and I'm going to grab the REST API URL here that I used, and we can reuse this actually for the single page. And so I will go to the post page, and we'll add a new variable. We'll call this WP minute single post, right? And we'll pass in a resource value again. And instead of the per page, we're going to pass in a slug value. And so I can do, let's see, I think it's like slug equals. That's going to bring them all in. And then what I need to do is pass in that slug value we created in the previous step. So I can open up my expression editor, right? Or just like here. And then, so this is a static value. And then what we want to do is pass in the dynamic slug value, right? So we can say our system variable, and we can say we want to choose from our params, right? We can do another period, and there's our slug value, okay? So if we click off that, it's going to give us an error, unexpected token. All right, so what did I do here? On the other one, I passed in, oh, I need to concatenate it. Silly me. All right, so on this, we need to concatenate our system variable. So we're just adding it to that slug value right there. So system params slug. And like that, it says now slug is undefined. Okay, so we can test that by putting something in here in the slug. So I'll just go back here to my posts on my demo site. I'll grab that and I'll paste that in there. And that looks like it's working. And I'm going to grab another one as well so we can test more than one. Paste that in there as well. Okay, so now if I inspect this, I can see it's passing in my slug. So from freelancing to product success with Laura Elizabeth. And if I go up to, I guess I have to grab it again, how to use ACF blocks. If I paste that in there and hit enter, right? Then if I go back to my data, I can see there it's passing in my the correct slug now, right? So it is connected. And now we just need to bind all this to our single post, okay? And it will be passed in dynamically. So on our heading, let's just get rid of this static content again, right? Hopefully it's starting to kind of come together, and we can pass in our REST API call, and then we want to pass in the data, and we want to pass in the value of that, and then we have all of the individual posts here. So we can search for title. And again, we want to get not just the title, but we want to get the rendered title. So there it is. Let's just delete this. We don't have that. And again, we can do the same thing with the rest of our sources here. We can pick our single post data. We'll pick data. And then we'll, again, I think you can use the arrow keys to go down. There's our featured image, and there's our featured image URL. So there is the featured image. So it is working, and then we can do the same thing down here again with our content embed. We'll get rid of everything that's in here, and we'll select our data, and then our content, and then our rendered content, okay? So there it is working. Wonderful. So now what I'm able to do is if I want to preview another URL or whatever, I can go back here and we'll select the other post. All right, so that is working. It's now pulling in that post's title, that post's featured image, and the content of that post. And you can switch between these, right? So how do we connect that to the list of posts? We'll go back to our homepage here, and let's turn this little link here into, well, let's, instead of view map, let's just do read post. And then for our properties for the post, we will select, again, this little dynamic data selector right here for the URL, select that. And we can select our collection data, right? And then we can find our slug. And so that will, again, dynamically pass that data in. And so now if I come here, I can select, let's see, automatic versus WP engine, read post. Doesn't seem to be, doesn't seem to be working. I know what I've done wrong though, because that is working. It's just what I needed to do is also pass in my dynamic value here for slash posts slash, and then concatenate that together with the collection item. And now I should be able to hit read post, and that'll take me to the post. Right. So that's, you got to make sure that you pass in your dynamic values. And that's just basically from what I named the page post. Like this could be anything else. But if that changes, you want to make sure you update that. Okay. So that is what I forgot to do there. But yeah, that is basically working. If I go to my homepage and view this, I can read private equity, right? Private equity, go back. We can, there's Noel Talk. We can read that post, right? So my styling's a little wonky here, right? But you get the idea. So that is basically how you use the, like a WordPress as a headless system in another builder with sort of very little code. So, all right. So one other last thing I want to show you is if we go back to our homepage here, one thing we can do is also add collections within collections. You can iterate and have nested queries. So what I'm going to do is let's just add another box, and let's bring that up here, and let's add our categories in here. So let's just add link, and then let's add a collection. We'll add a collection here, and oops, this is the wrong one. Let's get rid of that text there. Let's drag that link in there, and let's get our categories in here. So what we can do is also go to this collection, so you can see it's nested within this, and I can just delete all this stuff in here, and we could again grab our collection item, and let's grab the categories. You can see it. I don't want to get the individual categories. I want to just delete that period and get all the categories for each post. Right. So you can see that some of them have different numbers, right? Because not every post is in every category. And let's just connect the text up here. I won't do all the linking and stuff like that. We'll just do the, let's see, collection item, this one? No. It's like this one, and then the, no. Collection item. Text expects a text string. So let's look at our data here. Let's, instead of our categories, let's get the category category info. All right, so that's going to return a JSON object. Let's get that, and then that's going to get that. So then we can go back to our link. Everything's a little broken right now. We'll select that other collection item, and we'll get the category name. All right, so there we have the actual categories for each post, right? So here, the second post here, freelancing, marketing, etc. So you have those categories as well. So you can nest collections within collections. So that's that. I know that was a little long, but hopefully that was interesting. If you're interested in more of this kind of content, let me know. Now, remember, you can also do all this with Airtable or Directus or Strapi or Payload or any other CMS really that, again, that uses APIs, that has REST API or GraphQL support. You can create dynamic sites pretty easily. And so I didn't make any pages on that. I made 2 pages. I made a home page with my posts, and I made an individual post page. So I haven't created any other additional pages in here, but I have this data now rendered on my site. And the possibilities are really endless. And then you can also think about combining CMS together, right? That you could have your posts in something like WordPress or Ghost, where you have a content editor that's, content workflow where people are approving and publishing posts. But let's say you want to bring in some data from your Airtable, or you want to bring in some Google Sheet data, or you want to bring in something from Notion. You can combine that together to create really dynamic sites. So that is basically what I wanted to show you in this. Hopefully it made sense. And let me know what you think in the comments. Does this stuff interest you? Are you needing some kind of solution where you have have clients where they have a bunch of data in like their Airtable, and you want to make sure it's synced up to the front end? This really gives you all those possibilities. So that is what I wanted to show you. And let me know what you think down in the comments.